I know what you're thinking, did those checkerboarded colonies swarm? And why has that clown not been doing any videos? I can answer the first question. So anyway, if it turns out that you completely forget to bring any recording equipment to your site or your apiary visits, you can't do any videos. So that's my excuse. It's the end of the year now, but in this video I'm going to give you an update of what happened to those 6 checkerboarded colonies, how it compares with my other colonies that I've been managing, and really at the end, just after 3 years now, I'm going to give you 3 things that I think are a real benefit from this method, and 3 things that are more of a challenge. Okay, so in December last year we checkerboarded 6 colonies. Of the 6, 1 became a drone layer, and there's a reason for that. In this summer, or this season, we had a very wet and cold spring. So in April, when the checkerboarded colony tried to supersede, they obviously ended up with a drone laying queen. So to be honest, that one ended up being requeened, and later on I'll talk about the challenges of requeening a checkerboarded colony if they do become a drone layer. But of the 5 that were left, we actually had a very wet start to the year. End of April, everything flowered, sunny weather, and May and June were really good weather in the UK. But the problem was, because everything flowered at the same time, I've been told that there was a huge amount of swarming. The local beekeeping suppliers ran out of equipment to sell, to do Pagden or Demarays and what have you. They just said that there were so many beekeepers coming in, they'd never seen anything like it for the amount of swarming. And then at the end of June, where we normally see our main flow happening in the UK, we ended up with a very wet and soggy summer. The flow finished, looking at the colonies and the inspections, probably 2 to 3 weeks early, so we didn't have a summer flow, which is our main flow. We did, however, have a reasonable spring flow, and of those colonies I saw no swarming from the checkerboarded colonies. I did see queen cells in a lot of other colonies that had queen excluders, so it was actually a bit of a challenge this year. Okay, so we're going to have a look at this colony. Put the clearer boards in. Last time I looked a week or so ago, we had at least two brood bodies full of brood, a couple of brood bodies with stores in, mostly empty supers at the top. Then there's a crown board, and these are the 2 empty supers I just left on the colony, just in case we had a flow in July, which we didn't. Not many bees flying about today. It's not the best conditions. This is one of my checkerboarded colonies. Of the 5 we've maintained through the year, this is pretty much standard. Some of the ones around here now I've actually taken the honey off, but these are the last few, and we'll just video this as we go. So if we look, here we go, we've got bees all through. This is during the day, so we wouldn't expect that to be full because of all the foragers, but you can see immediately as I open up this colony now, robbing. So they have raised some brood, so it might be the bottom boxes coming off. So here we go. Fantastic brood pattern from this particular queen. So let's just put that back in. So we only have 1 brood body to clear honey from. Let's just double check. Is that? Yeah, there are some more frames of brood in there, so we will take that down because there's food in there. So I'm going to block your view. just temporarily, because I'm going to go and take the bottom box off because they've moved the brood up, which is, I tend to do that at the end of the year. Now, have we got any brood at all in this bottom box? Oops, that's a bit dodgy, but there we go. I think we can see now. I'm hoping we can see. Just a little bit of smoke. Right. So if we have got a relatively empty brood body here, we can put that for clearing, which I'm pretty sure we will have. There's a lot of bees in there. And you can tell just by the way these frames just aren't coming apart that we haven't been in here for ages. Oh, there's eggs in there, so we have got brood in the bottom. So I'm going to take out the frames that have no brood in and start to accumulate brood in the bottom box. So the three things I think are good about checkerboarding. One, swarm control. It's designed as a swarm control technique. I'm not saying it's foolproof, but in my experience, if you follow Walt Wright's methods, I haven't seen any swarming from the colonies, and surprisingly, even colonies that maybe I've left maybe a few days or a week too long, as soon as I put that space on, they've got such a field force of bees that and such a lot of house bees that they will correct any temporary backfilling towards the brood nest. So from my point of view, it does prevent swarming, and it certainly gives me a lot more peace of mind that my colonies aren't going to be swarming if I leave them for, say, more than a week. So I think the second thing is, when you do your inspections, you will find it's a lot quicker. My inspections comprise of opening up the top two boxes, or maybe just the top box if I'm using brood bodies. If they're in there and they're starting to put nectar in there, I'll just add another box. I don't go into the brood, apart from disease inspections that I still run start of the year, probably middle of the year, and then at the moment I'm doing disease inspections and checking as part of my winter preparations. Third thing is honey yields. I haven't got the data to compare between this apiary and another apiary, because this is the apiary I do my checkerboarding on, because it's quite a distance away from home. My other apiary is in a different location. It's semi-rural, rather than being quite a rural location like here. But I would guess, just for my own gut feel, between 1/3 and 50% more honey comes from a checkerboarded colony. They consume a lot more nectar because the brood nest becomes huge, quite easy at 4 deep boxes full of brood at their peak, so it's consuming a lot more nectar. But they also seem to have an ability to collect massive amounts of nectar even in periods where there's a dearth. That they seem to outdo a standard colony because of the number of bees they have, and I think that's just down to the number of bees and the network that they have of finding nectar sources, even when overall there's a dearth. They seem to still increase the incoming nectar, which is one of the big features for me. There's three things that I find that are more of a challenge. First one is finding the queen. If you have a hive that needs to be requeened and it's checkerboarded, you have to either spend a lot of time, or I've just come to the conclusion that the best thing to do is to use all those spare queen excluders that you're not using, put between all the brood bodies, leave it a week, come back, isolate the box with the eggs in, and then go and find the queen in there. And then it's just a case of you go through the other boxes, make sure there's no queen cells, and then you can requeen after that. But yeah, certainly if you went into a hive with a lot of spirit, that certainly is very, very active as soon as you open up that hive, and try and find that in maybe up to 48 brood frames, I think it's a very difficult task. So that's number one. It's more of a challenge to find the queen and requeen if there's a problem. Number two is foundation. For some reason, one of my experiences here is if I add a box of foundation on top of a colony that's checkerboarded, 9 times out of 10 they'll ignore it. So the only way I've found of introducing foundation into a checkerboarded colony is to actually checkerboard the foundation frames into an already drawn box, and then they'll start to draw it. I think just because of the number of bees they have, because they expand so quickly, they just see foundation as empty space and nothing. They only target really the drawn comb, so you need to force them a little bit more into drawing out that foundation. They certainly, earlier this year, because we had such a long winter, I don't think they had the bees in the actual colonies to process the incoming nectar when it suddenly appeared, and also draw out foundation. So the wax builders, or bees that could have been wax builders, were obviously just pulled into processing the nectar as it came in. So we didn't see a huge amount of foundation being drawn until later on in the season, when clearly the balance in the population inside the colonies was a bit more adapted to wax builders as well as the processing of nectar, and we didn't have a huge amount of nectar coming in the summer flow either. Now the third thing I would say is, for those that treat their colonies for varroa, you need to mark all your frames that you treat. When you start to do the checkerboarding, it'd be quite easy to lose where those frames go, and as you get towards the end of the season, they will start to backfill that third box that is the checkerboarded box, we say, and they'll put honey in that. So if you mark your frames, just make sure you then put them back into the lower brood box, and you will have to do a little bit, it's a bit more of a manipulation. This apiary here is treatment free, so it's a little bit less hassle, but for those of you that treat, you definitely have to be more careful. Okay, so for some of you that want to maybe try checkerboarding next year, want to give it a go, I mean, certainly try and take one of your colonies and see what the difference is. It's always interesting to see something new. We're actually going to be at the National Honey Show this year on the 27th of October. The link is in the comments section below. So for those that want to attend, we're on a workshop. I think it's the 27th of October, don't know what time. John and Anita will be there, who wrote the checkerboarding book for the UK. So please, if you are interested, come along just to see how it's practically done, and we're going to give you all of the hints and tips on how to do it successfully.